Welcome into the Alabama Football Report. I am your host today, Chris Daughtery. We appreciate you guys joining us for today's show. Before we get into it, just want to give some subscriber shout-outs for some people who subscribed very recently to the Alabama Football Report. So Steve, RTR, Dimitri, and William Stewart, we appreciate all you guys for subscribing here to the Alabama Football Report. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you hit that sub button right now, and even you might get a future shout-out or as a subscriber at the Alabama Football Report. Make sure you hit that sub button right now. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be breaking down Alabama's offensive line depth chart. It is the official dead period for recruiting right now, so a little bit slower. Some of those commitments are still going to trickle in, but we're going to be breaking down the offensive line depth chart for you guys. And looking at the offensive line, I think you're pretty solid when it comes to the starters. You know, Kadyn Proctor coming back, didn't have the best year last year, but he was a freshman. They had him at a heavier weight. I think him cutting a little bit of weight this year is going to help him bring some of that athleticism back. Tyler Booker, this interior of your offensive line is going to be amazing for you. Tyler Booker, you know, he could possibly very well be a first-round NFL draft pick in the 2025 NFL draft. I kind of think a lot of people are also sleeping on Jaeden Roberts. He came in last year after a couple games. He took over that right guard spot from Darrian Dalcourt and never let it go. And then you got the transfer center from Washington coming up in his sophomore year, Parker Brailsford, one of the best centers in college football last year. But I think the biggest battle that we're going to see is at that right tackle position between Elijah Pritchett and Wilkin Formby. Elijah Pritchett came in as a very, very talented freshman in the 2022 class. He was a 4-star recruit. Some of the sites had him as a 5-star as well. Number 37 overall in that 247 Sports composite rankings. He's the number 5 offensive tackle and the number 5 player from the state of Georgia from Carver High School. You know, Alabama has gotten a lot of commits from Carver High School as well, but Pritchett, his biggest thing so far has been the off-the-field issues. You know, in December of last year, he enters the transfer portal, and if I think my dates are right here, it's pretty insane the couple of days, the week that he went through. December 15th, he entered the transfer portal. Everybody freaked out. Why is this dude entering the transfer portal? He's most likely going to start for us this year after J.C. Latham goes off to the NFL. And then the very next day on the 16th, he withdraws from the transfer portal. Everybody breathes a sigh of relief. Okay, we got our right tackle. He's our guy. And then on December 17th, he was arrested for knowingly transmitting an STD. So not a very good week there for Elijah Pritchett. And then in April, he was arrested yet again for a second time for speeding on the strip. You know, cop walks up to his car and, you know, tells him to stop, and he takes off. There's a lot of people on the strip. Everybody says they saw him driving the car. So, you know, just not a very good run for Elijah Pritchett when it comes to the off-the-field stuff. You know, he's a guy that needs to be, you know, smart. He's very capable. These are the kinds of things that end up, you know, he's a first-round type talent. Whether or not he goes in the first round, I don't know. But these are the reasons for, you know, not included on the field stuff that takes you off of teams' first-round boards. Wilkin Formby, he's a Tuscaloosa native from Northridge High School, just right down the street over in Northport in Tuscaloosa. He was a 4-star recruit in the 2023 class. Number 90 overall, so another top 100 guy on this offensive line. The number 8 offensive tackle, and then the number 11 player from the state of Alabama. So let me know in the comments section right now, guys. It is the pinned comment on today's show. Who do you guys think starts at right tackle? We're going to go a little bit more in depth here, but let me know right now if you think it's going to be Elijah Pritchett, type EP. If you think it's going to be Wilkin Formby, type WF at the pinned comment. You know, Wilkin Formby with Kadyn Proctor, you know, going to Iowa, originally transferring out, it helped him a lot because they took Elijah Pritchett, they put him at the left tackle position, and Wilkin Formby was able to start A-Day at that right tackle spot. And I thought, you know, I went back last night and I watched the A-Day game again, and I only watched Wilkin Formby for a little while. And he did not get beat very much at all. I think one time he got beat all A-Day. And that was by LT Overton, who he beat most of the time. He also won reps against guys like Tim Smith, Jamarian Latham, Keanu Coate, Damon Payne. He was able to go up against some of the top talent that Alabama has on that defensive line, and he fared really, really well against them. He had one block against Tim Keenan that sprung Jam Miller for a 49-yard run. There was another really good block down the field by Kendrick Law that, sprung him for another 15 yards on that. But, I think Formby is going to have a really, really good shot to start at that right tackle position this year. And I think that battle goes on into the season as well. I don't think it's going to be one of these things that, you go into, fall practice and either one of those guys are going to win the job. I think it's going to be the same kind of thing that it was last year at that left tackle position between Elijah Pritchett and Kadyn Proctor. I think it's going to be a couple of games into the season before we see one of those guys really take over at the right tackle position. Make sure you guys check out Fanatics. A lot of Alabama players got drafted in this past year's draft. Go to chatsports.com/NFL jerseys. You can get guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry. I know a lot of Alabama fans are Saints fans as well. Also, a lot of Alabama fans are Tennessee Titans fans as well. You can also get those J.C. Latham jerseys. Just go to chatsports.com/NFL jerseys to get that. The link will be in the comments section and the description of today's show. There will also be a little clickable link over there in the corner that you guys can click on. Just click on that. It takes you to the Fanatics website. You might have to filter to, find which guy you want, but they've got them all for you. Just go to chatsports.com/NFL jerseys. Now, your interior of your offensive line is one of the best in college football this year. I think PFF put them in the SEC as the best interior offensive line in their rankings a couple weeks ago. You got Tyler Booker at left guard, Parker Brailsford at center, Jaeden Roberts at right guard. And all of these guys were really, really good last year. Like I said earlier in the show, I think a lot of people are sleeping on Jaeden Roberts for some reason coming up in this 2025 NFL draft. I think he's got a very, very good shot to go in the first round. You see the overall PFF grades there. Parker Brailsford grading out at 77.3, Jaeden Roberts at 76.7, and then Tyler Booker at 72.5. So, Jaeden Roberts, according to PFF, you can take it with a grain of salt. I know a lot of people out there don't necessarily love PFF, but, the interior of your offensive line is going to be really good for Alabama this year, and I have no issues about what's going to go down there on the interior. I do have a little bit of concern, though, when it comes to the depth. We'll talk about that a little bit more later in the show, but you are replacing a lot of guys on this offensive line. We talked about J.C. Latham, went to the Tennessee Titans in the first round this year. Seth McLaughlin, a lot of people feel a certain way about him. I'm with you in that, on that boat. He transfers to Ohio State. He was, I assume, going to be your starting center this year. Not going to happen. James Brockermeyer comes in, has a pretty damn good spring from all reports. I thought he was going to be your center this year. I thought he had a really good A-Day. Out of nowhere, transfers to TCU, goes back home. Okay, that's fine, whatever. You got Parker Brailsford there, so I'm fine with that. But like I said, the depth there still makes me a little bit nervous. What happens if Parker Brailsford goes down? Darrian Dalcourt, he played some for Alabama at a bunch of different positions on the interior of the offensive line. He played right guard. He played some center for you. At the end of the day, he just wasn't the best for you. He was a really good backup, but he did sign with the Baltimore Ravens as a UDFA. So, good for Darrian Dalcourt there. And then Terrence Ferguson, another guard that I thought was going to come in and, be a very, very solid backup for you. And then possibly next year, but not this coming year, but the year after, be a starter for you. And he just up and goes to Florida State with, how many Alabama players went to Florida State in the transfer portal this past year? It was like 4 or 5 guys. So he follows them, and, you're just going to have to – Alabama did a pretty decent job in the transfer portal coming in replacing some of these guys. We talked about Kadyn Proctor. He initially went to Iowa and then transferred. He doesn't go through spring practice. We talked about that on a video a couple of days ago. Doesn't go through spring practice at Iowa. Decides he wants to come back to Alabama after taking a spring break trip with some Alabama offensive linemen. That is kind of comical to me, but we got him back, so I'm good with that. Parker Brailsford, one of the biggest pickups you got in the transfer portal overall. One of the best centers in the country coming over from Washington. And then Naquil Betrand coming in from Texas A&M. Kind of had a little bit of a weird time at Texas A&M. And then Geno VanDeMark. He came in. He was one of those last transfer portal guys to come in for Alabama. Interior offensive line guy from Michigan State. I think if something happens with Parker Brailsford, he's probably going to be your guy to take over at that center position. He's worked at, the guard positions. He's worked at the center positions as well. And he has that relationship already with Coach Cap from Michigan State. So I really like Geno VanDeMark. He's probably, if any of those interior guys go down, whether that's at the guard position or at the center position, I think he's going to be your next guy in line. And then you've got a pretty decent freshman class that Nick Saban recruited last year. I will say, though, if Kalen Deboer brought in this offensive line group, there's going to be a lot of negative comments about it. But because Nick Saban did it, it's a pretty good offensive line class. Casey Poe coming in, top 100 player, number 2 interior offensive lineman. Can't wait to see what he can do for Alabama. And then William Sanders, Joseph Ionata. I really like William Sanders as well. I think it might take him, a couple of years to be able to develop and become a starter for Alabama, but I think he's going to be really good as well. And then Joseph Ionata, we saw him at that center position during the A-Day game, and, he had some not so great snaps, but he is a freshman. He's not going to be playing for a while, so it's okay. He's going to come in. He's going to develop. He's going to do his thing. So I really like this freshman class that Alabama got last year, and it's going to take them a while to get on the field, but that's how that offensive line position kind of works at the end of the day. So what is your confidence level in Alabama's offensive line room? Scale it for me 1 to 10 in the comments section right now. 1 on the low end, 10 on the high end. Get in the comments section right now and let me know, what is your confidence level in Alabama's offensive line room? Right now, I'd probably say I'm like at a 7-ish. I kind of went back and forth from a 6 to a 7, but I wanted to be a little bit more positive. So I did go with 7. I think my biggest thing right now is, what is Kadyn Proctor going to look like? Not going through spring. He didn't have the best year last year. He gave up 12 sacks. That's just not very good. He came in a little bit, heavier. They got him. They put some weight on him. And I think that hindered him. And he just wasn't able to, be as athletic as he can be at that left tackle position. He got beat a lot, especially against that, that Arkansas game. He gave up a few sacks in that game. It wasn't all his fault. Jalen Milroe, we've talked about it. He just holds on to the ball too long sometimes. But Kadyn Proctor has got to be better in 2024 for Alabama to really be solidified on the offensive line. And then my biggest concern right now for the offensive line, like I talked about just a minute ago, is the depth. What happens if one of these guys go down? It's going to be somebody that comes in and hasn't gotten really any playing time in their career. Wilkin Formby last year didn't really play at all. I think he's going to challenge Elijah Pritchett for that right tackle position. If he wins it and he goes down, it's going to be between those guys at right tackle. On the interior of the offensive line, I think VanDeMark, if one guy goes down, he's going to replace him. After that, though, I don't really know. We've talked about Montgomery before. I really like him as well on the interior of the offensive line. And, if something happens to Kadyn Proctor, maybe they throw Elijah Pritchett over there on the left side and Wilkin Formby goes into that right tackle spot. I don't necessarily think Naquil Betrand is going to really get playing time this year, but who knows? You never know. He might surprise some people. He might get in at some point, but we'll have to see. But the depth on this offensive line still concerns me just a little bit.